Call now. Luke's eyes go wide as he bears witness to the crawling, fluttering insects. He glances at my mother, then springs into action. It's okay, Dad yells, leaping to his feet and rushing to the sink. He crouches down and throws open the cabinets, rummaging around before pulling forth a handful of large garbage bags. Immediately, my father yanks open a bag and begins to shovel flies inside with his hands, scooping the whole mess across our dining room table, spaghetti and all. I'm still in shock, frozen in abject horror as time continues rolling on around me. I can hear my mother praying under her breath, but the second she begins, my dad reaches out and places his hand on her forearm. This stops my mom in her track. The interaction lasts no more than a few seconds, and thanks to the other bizarre occurrences erupting simultaneously around the room, I might have missed it. However, my father's action is arguably stranger than the sauce-covered insects scattering in every direction. Never before have I witnessed Luke Darling silence a prayer. Everything's fine, my mother abruptly pipes up, desperately helping my dad clean the table. She gets to work swatting some of the renegade flies that manage to keep their wings dry and take flight. Accidents happen. How is that an accident? I blurt, my voice even more shrill and panicked than expected. My father cinches his bag of sauce and insects and stands abruptly, stomping out our back door and disappearing around the corner. I hear the loud thud of a plastic trash bin echo through the darkness, then nothing. I stare quietly at the open door for a moment, realizing now that Dad is hesitating before making his return. A few seconds pass before he re-enters. Only this trip over the threshold has drained any sense of urgency from his expression. Not only is Luke calm and collected, but the vague hint of a smile has crept its way into the corner of his mouth. He seems amused. God's plan can feel pretty crazy sometimes, huh? I glance over to catch the flicker of doubt on Mom's face suddenly transforming into agreement. She's nodding along. What do you mean? I retort. I'm sick. Oh, honey, my father continues, shaking his head as he sits down and takes my hand in his. You're not sick. You must have just swallowed something at the falls. A bug in the water, Lisa chimes in. My instinctual reaction is to reject this idea, but there's something about it that kinda makes sense. Regardless, I've yet to come up with a better explanation. My father's right about one thing. God works in mysterious ways. You think I swallowed a bug? In the water? I repeat. Both my parents are nodding along, agreeing profusely. I start, then cringe as I trail off, disgusted by the thought. Laid eggs? I guess so, my father nods. Nature can be pretty weird. I don't know many insects with a life cycle that fast, I say, running through a sudden barrage of potential variables in my head and speaking the thoughts out loud as they come to me. My dad notices my mind working overtime and interjects, hey, don't stress yourself out. Right now, you've got more important things to worry about, he offers. You're about to graduate. Mom gently pushes my enormous glass of water towards me, encouraging a drink. I take a long, satisfying gulp as the cool liquid I take a long, satisfying gulp as the cool liquid soothes my irritating throat. Of course, it's irritating. I take a long, satisfying gulp as the cool liquid soothes my irritated throat. I finish and set the empty glass back down. Don't you think I should go to the doctor? I ask with lingering unease. I've been feeling really cold too. Let's just keep an eye on it, my mom suggests, placing her hand gently against my hair and running her fingers along the back of my head in a deeply soothing gesture. I'm sure everything's fine. Well, not everything's fine, my dad chimes in. I don't know about you, but I'm really not in the mood for spaghetti anymore. Who wants to order a pizza? My eyes scan the screen with deep intensity as I carefully work my way through an enormous wall of pixelated text. Above the cascading sentences is the photo of an insect, similar to the flies I coughed up earlier, but lacking a few select distinguishing features. Over the course of the last hour, I've gone from anxious and worried to deeply fascinated, consumed by a flood of information regarding the common Hexagenia limbate. Or Hexagenia limbate. I don't know. While the average housefly has a lifespan of 1 month, Hexagenia limbate experiences an entire lifetime over the course of a single day. That being said, their larval stage lasts much, much longer. If I were to swallow enough larvae at precisely the right time, then maybe I'd find myself in a situation like the one I just experienced over dinner. The bedroom doorway to my left is open and vacant, revealing the darkened hallway beyond, and my eyes keep returning to this gaping frame. All the trappings of a loving home are here, wrapping themselves around me in a confident assurance that everything will be just fine. Everything's always just fine. Yet for some reason, my gaze keeps drifting over to the darkness, lingering a while just to make sure nobody's there. I shake my head, taking a moment to refocus on the task at hand. I typically love this kind of research, digging deep and unwrapping the skin of a mystery until I understand every moving part. But my usual state of hyperfocus can't quite latch into place this evening. Something is off. All of today's bizarre sand grains finally coalescing into one troublesome metaphorical pebble in my shoe. The last time I deliberately maintained my focus on the digital words, actively battling any sense of distraction. It lasts all of 3 seconds. From the corner of my eye, I sense a vague figure adjusting in the shadows. A shape in the darkness that makes my blood run cold. I freeze, struggling to stay present and recognize my imagination must be conjuring up that dark-haired woman from the falls, until the figure suddenly raises its arm. 2 quick wooden knocks ring out, prompting my body to jump in alarm. I gasp loudly, only to discover my father standing quietly with a thoughtful expression on his face. "What's going on, hun?" he asks, his voice calm and soothing. "I'm just reading," I blurt. I glance back at the luminous screen on the desk before me. "I think I might have swallowed some Hexagenia limbate at the end of their larval stage." "Hexagenia whata?" Dad teases. "Mayflies," I clarify. My father laughs. "Why not just say that?" "Latina sit emet," I state in return, because Latin is fun. My father lets out a long sigh and casually crosses the threshold of my room, sauntering over to my bed and perching on the edge. "You're a very smart girl," Dad offers. "You're also very curious." I already know where this is headed, and I brace myself for the same conversation we've been having for years. Intelligence is a virtue, but curiosity is something else. "You know, the Lord doesn't ask much of us," Dad continues. "The Bible tells of great sacrifice, but I'm not Abraham, and you're not Ruth. We're on easy street. We don't have to pay money to walk in his shadow. We don't have to abandon our families. All we have to do is have faith. Real faith." I know, I reply. "I will believe when I do not witness." Tenet number 2. "You know, honey, sometimes I'm not so sure you will," my father continues, a great weight in his tone. "Seems to me you've been up here all night reading about fruit flies instead of trusting in his plan." "Mayflies," I correct. "And maybe learning this stuff is a part of God's plan." "It's good to be thoughtful, but when desire for knowledge takes over your life, what you're really saying is, even in the presence of God's light, I am not full. Do you understand? It's a sin, hun. That feeling you call curiosity is fine in small doses, but when you turn it into a habit, it becomes gluttony. A hunger for knowledge is still hunger." Just a quick note from an actual perspective. Yeah, this is terrible advice. This is outside of the confines and the context of the actual audiobook reading. This is terrible advice. But of course, that's why it's written this way. That's why Chuck wrote it this way, is because it is specifically terrible advice. But if anybody is out there not sure that it's terrible advice, it's terrible advice. We continue. I hate to admit it, but he's right. I've been up here in my bedroom, frightened and scared, turning to these digital walls of text instead of just trusting in the Lord. I'm obsessing over something that I'll never be able to make complete sense of, while the real answer sits right there in front of me. God is mysterious. I finally concede. My dad smiles. He really is, honey. How's Mom doing? I ask, still concerned about her reaction to all the chaos. Lisa was really shaken up. She'll be fine, Dad replies. She's still downstairs watching TV. God put a lot of resilience into that woman. Just like he put a lot of resilience into you. We sit in silence a moment longer before my father climbs to his feet, then strolls across the room towards me. He leans down to give me a kiss on the forehead, and with another swift movement, he reaches out and shuts my laptop. My father scoops up the gray rectangle and tucks it under his arm. Of course, my first instinct is to protest, but I already know that approach is going nowhere. I think you've had enough computer time for a while. Dad turns and heads towards the doorway once again. All right, lights out. He disappears down the hallway. I stand up and walk to the threshold, ready to shut my door and turn in for the night, but stop in my tracks. I stare at the frame in confusion, stepping back and forth through it a few times, as though I might find a better understanding from the opposite side. Only there's no bedroom door, only a frame. Dad? I call out. What happened to my door? My father appears at the opposite end of our upstairs hallway, peeking out of his bedroom. You never had a door, honey. He laughs, a curious expression working its way across his face. I narrow my eyes, glancing between my father and the empty frame. Pretty sure I had a door, I counter, a little more aggressively than intended. As the sentence leaves my mouth, I immediately back down, remembering my place in the Darling household. Sorry. Luke's good-natured demeanor falters. My father removes his glasses and rubs the ridge of his nose for a moment, clearly frustrated. We both know how you can get sometimes. He sighs. When you fixate on little things, you stop noticing the world around you. Dad returns his spectacle to their rightful throne. I'm racking my brain, desperately searching for answers to help this all fall into place. I have very distinct memories of opening and shutting a door in this very spot, but admittedly none of them are recent. However, I certainly have no recollection of taking a door off. You still don't believe me? My father finally continues. Luke stares back at me with searing intensity, the face of a hero now dismissed. The hair on the back of my neck has quietly bristled. This is a warning sign from my sympathetic nervous system, one I don't entirely understand. Piloerection. Small muscles at the base of one's hair follicles, involuntarily contracting in response to shock or fright. My father has asked me a direct question, but his abrupt shift in demeanor makes me uncertain if he really wants an answer. Check for a hinge. Check for screw holes. Dad challenges, his words less of a friendly suggestion and more of a command. I carefully turn my attention back to the frame, searching for any disturbance in the structure. I run my fingers across the place where holes or wet paint would be if construction had occurred at any recent time. I find myself greeted by smooth, dry paint. A door could have been removed from its hinges right here, but certainly not today. I turn my attention back to my father. Weird is all I can think to say, sensing a pang of guilt at the pit of my stomach. Tenet number 1, respect. I will honor what I do not understand. My father's burning gaze stays fixed on me a moment longer, then dissolves just as quickly as it had arrived. He grins wide and nods, chuckling to let me know the bit is over. He's just messing around. It's been a long day. Dad announces, I don't blame you for feeling a little out of it. Do you want to get a door for your room? I guess, I reply. He nods. I'll head down to the hardware store when I have some time and see what I can do. Should be an easy fix. Night, hon. With that, my father turns and heads back into his bedroom, shutting the door behind him. The house falls quiet once more. I creep back into my room, under the soft yellow glow of my bedside lamp. I undress and pull on a long green t-shirt featuring the logo of a classic condiment. Relish is written at the top of this familiar design, while the center part continues with 2 words, Sweet Jesus. I slip under the covers and turn off my bedside light, but I don't shut my eyes. Instead, I stare at the ceiling above me, my mind flooded with all the curious thoughts I've been explicitly told to avoid. Whether or not I swallowed a mouthful of mayfly eggs, the creatures are still absolutely fascinating. You know how you can get, my father said, a phrase I'd heard before, focused, tuned out, obsessive, single-minded, curious. I glance back at the empty door frame, searching for any movement in the dark hallway beyond. I glance back at the empty door frame. Searching for any movement in the dark hallway beyond, and then finally sliding over to the edge of my bed. I reach out and grab my phone, which rests on the side table, then quickly turn down its brightness as the device springs to life. Having technologically illiterate parents can be frustrating, but it also has its advantages. Case in point, the fact I can access all the same information on my phone that I can on my laptop seems completely lost on my father. I open up a new tab and do a quick search of Ephemeroptera, which means the whole mayfly order instead of any specific species. I slowly peruse this endless trove of information, the dim light of my phone a pale glow in the darkness. Several pages that I've already read appear, but I scroll onward in search of fresh information. Strangely, the more I read about these insects, We're busy reading. Go. I open up a new tab and do a quick search of Ephemeroptera, which means the whole mayfly order, instead of any specific species. I slowly peruse this endless trove of information, the dim light of my phone a pale glow in the darkness. Several pages that I've already read appear, but I scroll onward in search of fresh information. Strangely, the more I read about these insects, the less I think about my traumatic expulsion over dinner. I'm filling my brain with just enough logical stimulation that the rest of my consciousness can take a break. While mayfly larvae eat plant matter, the adult mayfly is a rare example of an animal that has no diet. They don't live long enough to eat. Whoa, I gush aloud, my eyes dancing across the tiny scene. Whoa, I gush aloud, my eyes dancing across the tiny screen as I scroll onward. The next search result is a local story about a man who claims to have discovered a new species of leech in the deep Neverton County woods. A photo is included, showing a clearly fabricated invertebrate that is nothing more than a pale, sagging balloon wrapped around someone's deflated football. Stringy hair has been pasted along the ridge of the mysterious creature's back. I remember when the story came out, and a wave of sadness washes over me. The hoaxer was a deeply disturbed man, a lost soul who would eventually take his own life. He was a non-believer. My phone buzzes, a notification appearing at the top of the flat, rectangular screen. Martina Coachman has tagged you in 5 photos. I recite under my breath, reading the words out loud against my own volition. I click the notification, my hush-hush and holy top-secret social media app filling the screen as it displays an assortment of pictures from today. I don't remember posing for any photos, and as I scroll through these uploads, I find my recollection to be correct. However, I did end up in the background of several shots, and Martina was kind enough to tag me. I take a moment to swipe through today's images, glowing with appreciation at my inclusion in this gallery that feels both familiar and deeply foreign. Many of these people are my friends, but a few non-believers have wormed their way into the mix. I see kids making hand signs I don't understand or recognize. There are swimsuits covering way too little, and t-shirts with logos that seem nothing short of a cult. Fortunately, there's just as many shirts featuring Bible verses to balance things out. I smile when I see one that reads, "I get high on the Most High," which is about as lurid as I'm willing to get. Even then, I feel guilty about my reaction. In one photo, Isaiah flexes for the camera, a display that makes me wrinkle my nose and unconsciously frown. In another, one of the guys has pulled the bottom of his shirt into his own collar to create the approximation of a bra. I'm in the background of that one, standing by myself and struggling to act normal. The next photo features Martina flanked by two girls I only vaguely know, the three of them doing some kind of secret agent finger gun pose I've seen before, but I can't seem to place. I can't help making note of how pretty Martina is, a strange feeling bubbling up inside me as I observe these digital representations of her smiling face. The emotion coursing through my veins is uncomfortable, an ache that burns and sizzles awkwardly. It feels a little like jealousy, but not entirely. This girl's super gay. That part wasn't in the book. I mean, the sizzling part, yes, but the this girl gay, that's not in the book, but this girl gay. I dive even deeper into my friend's archive, my fingers gaining a mind of their own as I swipe from one image to the next. I'm no longer just perusing snapshots from today, but bounding back in time to various activities, outfits, and hairstyles. I stop at a photo of a strangely innocuous moment, a portrait Martina appears barely ready for. She's standing on her couch mid-laugh, casually clad in a blazer and a button-up white shirt that's way too big for her. I've never noticed just how many freckles Martina has dancing across her skin, even today at the swimming hole. So jealous. Martina's strawberry hair is up in a messy bun, renegade strands falling around her shoulders, in a way that somehow appears both completely random and perfectly planned. One eyebrow is cocked high above the other in a silly face, a face that would probably be deeply unflattering on anyone else. But for some reason, her expression slips right between my ribs like a perfectly placed spear to the heart. My body flushes with heat as I shift my weight in bed, turning from side to side. My skin is tingling. Suddenly, however, the rising temperature comes to an abrupt halt. A wave of cold washes over me, chilling me to the bone. My breath catches in my throat, and I'm unsure of how I should respond to this bizarre thermal shift. I look to the bedroom window, wondering if I'd accidentally left it open and allowed the cool of the evening to slip inside. I didn't. What I do notice, however, is the slightest bit of movement from the corner of my eye. It's so fast I barely have time to react, and even when I turn my head fully, there's nothing there. It feels as though I'm witnessing some residual presence, the ethereal ghost of someone who stood in my doorway just moments earlier. I gaze into the darkened hallway. Struggling to perceive anything as my eyes adjust from their warm visions of Martina's freckly grin on the brilliant phone screen. "Dad?" I call out with quiet apprehension, my voice soft as it flows through the darkness. No response. I lock the phone screen and place it flat against my chest, waiting for my pupils to dilate and listening intently for any sign from the shadows. It takes a beat for me to realize just how tightly clenched my muscles have become, and I consciously relax. I focus on my breathing, appreciating that steady in and out as my chest moves up and down against the blanket. On one hand, I begin to drum out my finger patterns, counting down in specific arrangements. I've done this since I was a child, sometimes when I'm bored, but mostly as a way to soothe my body in times of high tension. Suddenly, a spasm in my throat. I cough and sputter as the steady flow of air is broken, this brief moment of chaos escalating to a final heave that ejects a tiny, fluttering insect from my mouth. I can't see the single fly, but I hear this creature buzzing around my room. It zooms from one corner of darkness to the next, rattling against the glass of my bedroom window before finally coming to a rest. Mayflies don't buzz like this, I realize, unable to stop my analysis. The wings of my mystery insect are much more powerful than any mayfly, humming along with the relentless vigor of a common housefly in search of ripe decay. Overwhelmed with disgust, I sit up and I turn on my bedside lamp once again, hunting for the tiny intruder, but unable to locate this now silent insect. I'm not sure if the horrible taste in my mouth is really there, or just a product of my own subconscious mind after the lone straggler made their esophageal exit. Either way, I need a glass of water. Climbing out of bed, I search my windowsill one last time for the renegade insect. My parents hauled away the trash pretty quickly, leaving me to research from memory, and it'd be nice to procure a live sample. I consider waiting for the fly to buzz again, but after a patient moment, the atrocious tang in my throat is just too much to bear. Quietly, I creep into the hallway and make my way downstairs, guided by nothing more than the light of the moon as it streams through nearby windows. Sorry. With every step, the soft chatter of the distant living room television grows in volume, and from the house's main foyer, I can see the flickering glow dance across the opposing kitchen wall. Shivering, I press onward, the dull chill still lingering within me. Rounding the kitchen corner, I now have a full view of the dining room and the living room beyond. It's here my mother sits, the back of her head silhouetted by a flashing TV. Her neck has a slight cant to it, revealing that she's fallen asleep while watching her favorite show. In the Darling household, our television options are limited. Temptation comes in many forms, including an overwhelming number of secular channels. They've been blocked with parental controls, leaving us with 4 appropriate networks to choose from. By now, I know all the commercials by heart, including this local offering from my very own Kingdom of the Pine Church. The familiar advertisement flashes into view. Pastor Pete Bend strolling calmly across a field of brilliant grass. Behind him, several rows of stark white cabins stretch along the edge of the forest, and beyond these is a metal flagpole hoisting a massive American flag. The site is immaculate and clean, fresh paint and tightly cut lawn, immediately letting the viewer know this is more than just another cozy summer camp. A 1-800 number appears at the bottom of the screen, and it remains there for the entire duration of the commercial. It's a bit excessive, but it's also good marketing. And I'd be remiss to say Kingdom of the Pine doesn't know how to market themselves. It's what this church was founded on. For all have sinned and come short of the glory before God. For all have sinned and come short before the glory of God. Pastor Bend offers in a casual direct-to-camera speech. In other words, nobody's perfect. We've been blessed by the Lord to walk in the sun this beautiful day and smell the fresh Montana air. But what we do with this blessing is up to us. Pastor Ben skirts the line between a young man with older features and an older man who happens to be surprisingly youthful. He's always dressed in the current trends, yet gray hair overtook his temples long ago. The man's face always seems to fall in a natural smile, and his eyes are brilliant and excited. He's wearing an earth tone jacket, decidedly fashion forward and trendy. Around the man's left wrist is a familiar band of red fabric, a recognition of Tobias Kobel's sacrifice. The pastor stops his casual stroll, and his expression changes slightly, becoming more serious as the camera begins an achingly slow zoom towards his face. Does the temptation of unnatural lust have a hold on you or someone you love? Has someone in your life found themselves in the unholy grip of same-sex attraction? Don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. Be proactive. The camera cuts away from Pastor Ben to show a montage of footage from around the camp. Young people are playing baseball together. hustling around the bases and sliding into home. A group of joyful teenage girls rows a boat on the surface of a mirror-calm lake. Two young men with massive crucifixes on their t-shirts playfully razz each other over dinner at the camp dining hall. A Christian rock band plays enthusiastically on a beautiful outdoor stage. The guitarist, a youthful dark-skinned man with an armful of religious iconography in the form of brilliant ink. This place is cool. A life free from sin is possible, and it's waiting for you at Camp Damascus. Pete Bend continues in voiceover as the inspiring footage continues. Kingdom of the Vine has developed a one-of-a-kind reparative program for homosexual youth. We believe that a sympathetic yet firm approach is what makes Camp Damascus so special. It's also what makes it so effective. The screen jumps to a new shot of a young man with tousled blonde hair. He's sitting in one of the cabins and a wide smile is stretched across his face. Below him, a title bar appears reading Jordan, 16, ex-gay. How would I describe my time at Camp Damascus? He replies to someone just off camera. Life-changing. I'm so thankful for all of the counselors here, and for Pastor Bend. They saved me. Moments later, another talking head appears, his smiling face perfectly framed as a quiet lake stretches out beyond him. It's the handsome guitarist from earlier, Saul, 22, counselor. Saul gazes straight down the lens, showing his showmanship immediately palpable. Purpose, community, connection, the man offers with stalwart confidence. You're gonna grow here, but you're also gonna have a lot of fun. The screen cuts back to Pastor Bend, who's standing in a modest outdoor amphitheater, surrounded by lush forest. There are bleachers positioned on either side of him, and they've been divided down the middle, with men on the left and women on the right. Pastor Bend stands tall at the center of it all, addressing the camera directly once more. Behind me are more than 300 Camp Damascus graduates. But over the last 13 years, they've helped thousands of young people go on to lead healthy, normal, heterosexual lives in the presence of God. He passionately exclaims, the facts speak for themselves. We are the most effective ex-gay ministry on the planet, boasting a 100% success rate. In the long history of Camp Damascus, there's not been a single reversion to same-sex attraction. The screen fades to a long, slow pan across the bleachers, prompting me to recognize a few notable faces from my own high school, mixed in with others from across the globe. The only issue I have with this commercial, with a 100% success rate, there's no need to hire actors. Yet the handful of acquaintances who ended up in this crowd shot claim they never went to Camp Damascus. A few of them did actually go, but when I prod about what it was like to shoot this commercial, they always have trouble finding the words. Must have been amazing. So call the number below. Begin the process of embracing a better life for you or someone you love. Pastor Bend announces confidently. With a little help, every one of us can. He pauses for a moment as the whole camp joins for a raucous cheer. Love, right! They cry out in unison. The commercial fades to black, and my mother's late night program returns to the screen. An hour of preaching from an ultra-liberal California pastor she probably shouldn't be watching but tunes in for after Dad's gone to bed. I hesitate a moment and bask in the gratitude that suddenly washes over me. Today may have been strange, but at least I'm not dealing with the torment those poor souls at Camp Damascus are constantly battling. At least I'm not gay. The second I register this thought, I catch an unexpected vision slinking along with it, a stowaway. The fantasy comes in a flash. A startling image of another girl and me at a diner. It feels warm and cozy as we sit across from one another, sipping coffee and giggling over some inside jokes. I reach out and touch her left hand across the table, and she hoists her drink with the right. The silhouette of a cartoon crocodile is on her mug. But the thing that really draws my attention is just how beautiful and deep her dark brown eyes are, framed with a bob of black hair. As soon as the thought arrives, however, it disappears. I'm left feeling strange and uncomfortable. My mind and my body at odds with each other in their reaction to this imaginary scene of some hypothetical other life. I remind myself that 94% of people report having intrusive thoughts. Moving on, I quietly turn to the cupboard, opening it up and pulling out a tall glass. I fill the cup with tap water, listening to the pitch of this faucet's soft hiss for timing, and then turn back and creep towards the stairs. I only get a few steps before halting in my tracks, a potent surge of adrenaline coursing through my body. A humanoid figure now stands next to the television set, tucked away in the darkness and perfectly still. I blink a few times, staring at this mass in the shadows as I attempt to make some sense of it. I've gone from a bright screen to pitch black so many times in the last few minutes that my vision is struggling to keep up, fighting to sort through things that are actual threats and things that are nothing more than a coat rack or a standing lamp. Is that a hanging arm and a leg? I think to myself. My mother remains motionless on the couch, completely unaware of the tension that fills the room around her. My body is trembling, the glass of water in my hand vibrating as I wait and observe. "Mom," is all I can think to say, attempting to wake her up in a hushed tone. The figure remains still, utterly motionless in the dim, flickering light of the living room. "Mom, do you see that?" I continue a little louder this time. My mother stirs a bit, but she does not wake. "Mom!" I finally blurt, enough force behind my voice to pull her from her slumber. The figure erupts towards me in a horrifying, confident march, abruptly revealing themselves and prompting a frightened shriek to escape my throat. I stumble back, dropping my glass against the kitchen tile with a resounding crash. I immediately recognize the intruder. This glimpse in the darkness, all I need to recall the woman at the falls. Her stark white eyeballs and strange, mangled grin come surging back to me, flooding my mind with abject terror. She's wearing the same deep red polo as before. Her hair, stringy black, flows behind her as she rushes forward. I stumble against the dining room table, knocking it back with a hollow skirt as I fail to catch myself. I hit the ground hard, feeling the cold chill of spilled water soaking through my shirt. Suddenly, however, my intruder alters course. The woman turns a crisp 90-degree angle, heading towards a nearby closet and disappearing into the darkness. The next thing I know, my mother is blasting on the living room light and rushing towards me, a look of belligerent alarm. "Rose, oh son of a gun!" she cries out. A moment later, she steps on a shard of glass and erupts with an unbridled howl. "Shoot! There's someone in the house!" I scream, tears streaming down my face. "She's in the closet!" A look of grave concern crosses my mother's face as I say this, glancing between me and the nearby door as she hobbles over and crouches down. "What are you saying?" Lisa questions. "Who's in the closet?" "The lady from the falls," I clamber wildly, losing myself in the mighty flood of emotion that courses through my body. "She had these blank eyes and weird teeth. She's wearing a uniform." My mother's eyes furrow as I say this. Dad arrives in the kitchen doorway, panicked and out of sorts. "What's going on?" he asks, hurrying over until my mother raises her hand to stop him in his tracks. "Glass," is all she says, prompting Dad to glance down before taking a cautious step back. "What's going on?" my father repeats, calmer this time. I struggle to follow his lead, pulling it together as much as I can before pushing onward. "So there's a woman in the house," I inform him. "She was standing in the dark and she just ran at me. I saw her earlier today at the falls and she must have followed me home. She had blank eyes," my mother adds, strangely calm now, "and a uniform." With this new information, my father's expression flickers slightly, changing in a way that's so subtle I'd barely notice if not for the fact that I'm looking right at him with my senses on high alert. My father points to the closet door. "In here?" he questions. I nod. Dad creeps towards the door as my eyes widen in fear. He's got nothing to defend himself with in the frightening event that this intruder has a weapon, but he doesn't seem to care. "Wait!" I blurt, terrified by the thought of what lurks within. Before I have a chance to stop him, however, Luke yanks open the closet door. My father halts abruptly, staring into the darkness for a beat, and then reaching out to turn on the light. There's nothing in the closet. A startled gasp escapes my lips. I'm both confused and relieved. Dad turns around, a solemn look on his face, as he returns to me. He takes his time to avoid the shattered glass that covers our kitchen floor, then eventually kneels down so we're eye to eye. It's been a long night, my father announces, reaching out and placing his hand on my shoulder. Everything okay, honey? My first instinct is to protest, to tell him I'm perfectly fine and the strange woman must have slipped past him somehow. But the words won't form. Instead, I start crying again, even harder than before, as I allow the feelings to sweep me away like Noah's Ark. My parents soothe me from either side, hushing gently as I collapse into their arms.